Replacing the Dodge Charger and Challenger after some 20 years of the previous iteration was never going to be an easy pitch to the base. Rolling out last year, the new Charger, well, it started electric and it made oodles of power, sure, 670 horse in the top Daytona Scat Pack trim. But even with its fun simulated exhaust and all the rest, it just didn't have quite the same soul. Lovely car, would have made a great Chrysler 300, but didn't feel Charger or Challenger. Finally though, for 2026, we've gone back to the roots. This is the new Dodge Charger Sixpack Scat Pack. This top trim with 6-cylinder inline Hurricane 3-liter twin-turbo engine puts out 550 horse. It isn't quite as quick as that top EV, but then gasoline seldom is anymore. Instead though, we get a certain tactile truth and a really interesting demonstration of what happens when you build a car to fulfill multiple roles. Before we hit the road though, it bears understanding where exactly the Charger fits now, because Dodge is in a bit of a funny spot. If you look at what they're selling right now, they've got the Durango, which has been around seemingly forever. They just retired the previous Charger and Challenger, which ran 18 years. And they've got that Hornet that nobody really seems to care about. And now that Ram trucks are their own thing, well, what do they have left? It was time for something new. So, replacing the LX LD platform Charger and Challenger are now a single model. You can have this Charger as a 2-door like this, which replaces the Challenger in spirit, or the 4-door, which uses basically the same chassis and has the same interior space and all the rest. That means that this 2-door, though, is a very big car. Well, yes, technically a sports coupe. This thing is tremendous. It is one of the widest cars on sale right now if you get it flared out here in the Scat Pack. It's so big then that it almost bears wondering, is this thing sporty? Well, considering what muscle can and should be, credibly for its sort of thing. You see, the Charger doesn't have to be dynamic necessarily, it just has to go burt in a straight line. So, now that the weather has changed so significantly from when I shot a bunch of the footage this morning, let's see how this Canadian-built Charger handles a little bit of Canadian weather. The introduction of the Hurricane Straight Six was a rough time for Dodge and the rest of Stellantis, to be honest. Their American brands loved the big displacement 5.7-liter V8. Whether a buyer actually got a V8 or just bought a Pentastar under its halo, that engine was critical to the American brand's identity. Buyers liked the idea of a brawny, testosterone-laden vehicle, and especially in these muscle platform cars like the Charger and Challenger, well, the lack of any option for that, you can see how people were upset. The V6 though, well, it was nothing particularly special. It did the job, it didn't get the cars anywhere in a particular hurry. Acceleration was what, 5-6 seconds in those things? It was just a car, and generally a large and somewhat unwieldy car at that. The old entry-level Challenger in particular was a style piece. It was something that you got for the lifestyle, but it didn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense, especially when you could have had a more sensible 4-door Charger or just a sensible crossover. All of that hand-wringing though was only compounded by the announcement that the engine would be turbocharged. Well, that just made things all the worse, because a lot, especially of the older crowd, remember an era when turbocharging was new, when it was slapped onto engines that weren't initially engineered for it, and that often struggled with the high pressures and would grenade as a result. Nowadays though, we have figured out, especially after Ford's early EcoBoosts, that if you engineer an engine properly before you turbocharge it, you'll probably do a little bit better. This engine then, which we've been experiencing for a few years now in the new generation Ram 1500s, as well as the full-size Wagoneer SUVs, had a couple early teething issues, thermostats and the like, but it seems to have settled into a pretty steady rhythm. And indeed, that steady rhythm, well, it applies to the way the car runs as well. Instead of the old V8's potato, potato, potato thrum though, that throb, straight sixes, well, they're typically very balanced, very smooth engines. That's part of why BMW likes them for its premium models. Here though, Dodge seems to recognize that that ain't gonna play. So, while they've still got that benefit of the actual smoothness up there in the front, they made sure that this feels like it's got some rumble and some texture. And especially in this top-of-the-line Scat Pack, we've got a good helping of sound. That sound though, well, it sounds a little BMW, and that's a funny condition for a Dodge Charger to have. It's not too crackly, it's not too raspy, and when you run it in the regular modes or with the exhaust valves closed to keep things civil, well, it's just polite with just that little bit of satisfaction that you're in something a little more special than just your regular full-size car like an old Taurus or something. Switch it into sport and open those exhaust baffles though, and especially once you get the throttle past a certain point, it opens up and it breathes and it rumbles. This is a satisfying car to roll into. And well, yes, technically you can get some okay fuel economy in it. There's a reason that I've been running 13s all week. What's neat too though is that rumble comes to you in a slightly different way. Previously, the Challenger had rear seats, but then they just closed off under the back window and you had a bulkhead that sort of separated, isolated you from that sound. In these new cars though, we have an extended liftback, a sort of long sweeping hatchback. And as a result, the trunk is actually just sort of part of the main passenger area here. We get a good flow of sound then coming up from underneath the trunk floor. And that's something that's actually all the more amplified by the curiosity of this platform. You see, these new cars are built in Windsor, Ontario alongside the Dodge Caravan for a reason. Both of them use the new STLA large platform, or Stellantis large basically. This platform is modular, and modular car platforms are nothing new. But what's important here in the Charger is, as evidenced by its debut as an EV before, this is a multi-powered model. But what's really interesting about it is that they haven't just gone like the Genesis G80 and thrown electrification into a gasoline platform. Instead, they've made one chassis that is purpose-built to accept either powertrain and from the same assembly line as well. As a result, the floor in this is really rather high because there's room under it for a full battery pack. In the EVs, it's 100.5 kilowatt hours, 400 volt. You can learn more about that in our full review of the Daytona. But here in the gasoline model, we've still got that raised floor. That means that if you look underneath or from the sides, it's about 4 inches of flashing coming down from what is the actual floor pan here. But then it also means that in the trunk there, because there had to be room for battery as well as drive unit and that Fratzonic exhaust, well, the floor is really not much lower than the actual load floor there. You don't really get subfloor storage as a result. It just sort of runs in flat and deep. Now, in the winter like this, even just loading and unloading my camera gear, that has already proven a little bit inconvenient. And the rearmost reaches of that boot, well, they aren't exactly the friendliest to use. Because the liftgate tapers down to a very tight pinch at the rearmost extreme, there is a limit to what you can put back there. Yes, it's deep, but it isn't necessarily high. We're gonna have to wait for hopefully a new generation Dodge Magnum to solve that issue for us. In the interim though, it means that we have large cargo capacity, just with caveats. If you fold the seats down, of course, you do get a good bit more, but they don't fold entirely flat, so again, limitations. That said, the rear seating, I've got to say, even before I talk about the fronts, well, it's really quite impressive. We have some 3 feet of legroom in the rear. It is full size. This cabin is the same size as what you get in the 4-door version. That just uses different doors and a little bit of other trim stuff. That means that at 5'8", I can very comfortably sit behind myself with actually a surplus of legroom when I'm in the back. It's really pleasant, and headroom is similarly really accommodating. In this optioned up Plus model, that actually gets even better too, because we have the added couple inches here with this panoramic glass roof, which opens it up that much more. Up front, meanwhile, we have really rather conventionally Charger Challenger feeling seats. Here in the Plus, we've got adjustable bolsters, and I've inflated these to support me a little bit more at the sides because these are meant to accommodate your wide boys. But down below, we've got quite a bit of leeway for the thighs. There isn't a lot of lateral support if you plan on throwing this thing into corners. Having tracked the EV though, I've got to say that, well, yes, this, especially with its 4-wheel drive, is a rather competent setup to try to do performance driving with. That's not what you should really be looking toward this for, because this is a muscle car. It is big, it is heavy-ish at some 2,200 odd kilos. Really then, it becomes a car about the straight lines, or indeed, about the touring. With the 550 horsepower that we've got here, the 531 pound-feet of torque running through all 4 wheels, but selectable to the rears if you want, that gives us acceleration of 3.9 seconds. That figure is a little ways slower when you go into the lower trim RT, which is the current entry level, which starts at 420 horsepower and 469 pound-feet of torque. That RT starts from around $60,000, whereas you're looking toward $80,000 up here in the Scat pack. The electric, meanwhile, starts at around $55,000. Whichever you get, you're getting a mechanical limited slip diff out back and the option to put it into a playful rear drive mode so that you can chuck the tail about. Also reminiscent of the Challenger we had before is just the general character of the cabin ahead of and around us, but modernized significantly. The primary drama is in the sort of concave trim that runs around the perimeter here, and in higher models, which gets attitude adjustment accent lighting. You can set your colors and all that, everything's got mood lighting nowadays, but it is something that feels rather more refined, rather more modern than what we're used to from a regular Dodge product. Materials remain a mixed but mostly positive bag. There is a lot here that feels a lot better than what you're going to find in Ford or anything else of the like, but it is still plasticky in places, and that's just the reality of a car that needs to be somewhat affordable, or at least as affordable as a base price of $60,000 is. As is typically the way though, digital displays do their job, but not with a particular elegance or grace. These feel like they were designed some time ago. The Uconnect 5 in the center screen does its job, but I don't love it. And likewise, the center cluster here, well, it lacks some basic customizability that I would have expected, especially of a car this modern, of this generation, and which otherwise has relatively smooth graphics. Now, there are different sizes of displays and clusters depending on which trim you get. The cluster, for instance, is the 16-incher here in the top trim, but you're looking at something smaller if you go for the basics. Whichever way you go though, you are looking at wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and in the higher trims you can have a wireless charging pad down there in the center as well. As a driver, the Charger remains an everyday car that you can tour on long distances, but then also have a little bit of fun with on the straight line. With that in mind, we've got a couple fun features that are really important to address here. For starters, we have a standard mechanical limited slip differential out back. What's even more exciting is that, well, yes, these things all come all-wheel drive now. You can isolate it and set it to rear drive only so that you can have some burnout, silly, slip-slidey fun. All of that tire spinning doesn't have to be silly or wasteful either, because with an eye to the drag strip for those 3.9-second pulls, you ideally want some temperature in your tires. And so, just as in the Hellcats before, you can go into the performance pages here and you can use line lock. This locks the front brakes so that it holds the car in place while you spin the rear tires to clear debris off and to warm them up to temperature so that they're grippy and they stick and bite into the tarmac to pull this thing forward even faster. For most drivers, of course, this equipment and these gimmicks aren't really all that important, of course. Many people are going to buy these things for the image they project, for the joy, the fun, the silliness, and for the sense of potential that exists on paper or that they see in videos. But it'll really just be a pleasant everyday cruiser, one that benefits from actually Canadian refined noise, vibration, and harshness refinements that make this thing really, really quiet and smooth all about. I've really enjoyed cruising in this thing, just trouble and effort-free all week. What's important about these gimmicks though is that here in the gasoline-powered Charger, they feel credible again. The electric Charger Daytona was an impressive car, but as I've said, would have made a better Chrysler 300. Well, yes, electric motors make power. They lend themselves well to the muscle car ethos. The fact that they tried to pigeonhole that thing into a Hellcat sort of positioning just was never gonna work. Here though, we've got sounds, we've got the right sensibility to it. No, it isn't quite as crude and potato as a V8, but we've seen now with the recent drag special, of which they made about 50 units, that you can fit a V8 into this platform, albeit with some modification to the actual structure. And with that, I think Dodge has established that this is back on track. They're still going to be offering the top models of the Charger EV, and while they have canceled the top 900 horsepower Banshee because they've realized that just nobody, even in the hypercar realm, really seems to want these cars, well, that may feel a bit of a setback for the super performance crowd. It's ultimately not going to be much of a net detriment, I don't think, to the core base here. Instead then, we've got a car that makes sounds, that rides beautifully, that's just really, really enjoyable to be out and about in the city in. Well, yes, it's a little impractical, it's really big, it's bulgy, and it's somewhat inconvenient at times to navigate through the city. This is the car that it was supposed to be from the start. And I'm really, really, really relieved for Dodge that they've brought things back on track, as well as for those workers in Windsor who now have a car that I think people are gonna wanna buy because the Charger EV just was not it. I am so delighted for the Dodge team. And well, yes, I am disappointed that you've got to pay up toward $85,000 for a fun one. That is what you've got to pay for a top-of-the-line Mustang these days. Granted, those GTs have a 5-liter V8 and the option of a manual transmission, which does give them, honestly, some pointers in my book. But as an everyday car, I think I'd probably be a little bit more inclined toward this. It just feels a little bit nicer. It's more welcoming. It seems more usable. What's more, it's made here. It's got the performance figures to back up what it's claiming. And this straight six, well, is a really pleasant engine. With all that then, I think I can confidently say that the new Charger is absolutely a correction on the disappointments that we felt with the rollout of the electric. Well, no, this straight six isn't necessarily a Hemi. Don't forget that not every Charger or Challenger was powered by a Hemi. Many people look to those as halos that drew them in the door in the first place, sure, but a lot of Chargers and Challengers ran Pentastar V6s, an engine that made less power than the base 420 horse in this, and one that never sounded particularly special. Now we've got something that makes better numbers, that comes standard all-wheel drive, and one that seems poised to keep that Windsor production line quite busy with the flexibility for a whole lot more variations into the future. For Driving.ca, I am a very refreshed and reassured L. Alder. For more car reviews, news, specs, tests, and all the rest, be sure to follow us online on Driving.ca and check out our socials.